There's a popular online virtual reality game called Yggdrasil. However, due to circumstances, the company has decided to shut down its servers. A certain player named Mamonga is a guild leader of Ainz Ol Gaun. He's savoring his last few moments in the game before the server shut down for good and it becomes history. The only other guild member is his dear friend Hero, who was also inside the game. But he says his goodbyes to Mamonga and logs out, hence in turn leaving Mamonga as the only member of the guild still in the game. He loiters around, sits on the throne, and even messes up the settings of a prominent NPC named Albedo, because who even cares at this point? Albedo becomes a woman in love and gets obscenely obsessed with Mamonga from here on out. And this is where things have taken an interesting turn. Even after the time has passed and the servers have shut down, he's still in the game, unable to log out. Furthermore, the NPCs have come to life, meaning every single subordinate in their guild territory, aka the Great Tomb of Nazarick, is now a sentient human being. The world of the game has quite literally come to life. Mamonga takes a few moments to fully understand what's going on. He then asks the head butler, Sebes, to survey what's going on outside Nazarick, and sends Albedo to gather the floor guardians. Then at the Grand Arena of Nazarick, he tests the strength of both the 6th floor guardians, Aura and Mare. They're both twins and have to go up against the primal fire elemental which Mamonga summoned to prove their competence. Mare isn't all that keen on fighting though, but the two cute siblings are infatuated by the kindness of their leader. Eventually the floor guardians arrive, and there in the presence of their overlord, they kneel and swear their loyalty to the guild leader of Ainz Ol Gaun. This leads to Mamonga expressing his faith and confidence in them that they'll all sincerely fulfill their duties. He then informs them about how Nazarick is currently caught up in a mysterious situation, and that's when Sebes and the butler comes back from his survey and informs Mamonga about how the Nazarick is surrounded by grasslands instead of the swamps which used to be on the outskirts. Mamonga concludes that Nazarick has been mysteriously transported to an unknown land. He asks Albedo and Demiurge to create a strong information sharing system. As any great leader would, he asks them about their thoughts about how to conceal Nazarick from outside threats, commands them, and then teleports back to his throne. Meanwhile, the floor guardians were overwhelmed in his presence, and after he takes his leave, they can't help but praise their leader. Albedo even comments that out of the 41 supreme beings, he's the one on top, and the only one who is still with them. And looks like it wasn't just Albedo who gets sexually excited in Mamonga's presence. A vampire named Bloodfallen Shaltir is also the same. Though Demiurge mentions an interesting idea, Mamonga may very well leave them one day as well, so it'd be good insurance to have him declare his successor beforehand. Later, Mamonga changes his appearance after consulting with the battle maid Ner'Baral and decides to go outside. But Demiurge doesn't let him go alone and accompanies him after permission. The beauty of the world outside amazes him, and he kinda casually talks about taking over the world. Demiurge took that statement seriously. He then sees Mare exceptionally concealing the walls of Nazarick on his orders and rewards him with one of his rings. Albedo also enters the chat but gets irrationally irritated at the sight of Mare wearing one of those rings, so he presents her with one as well. She is the overseer of the floor guardians after all. As this is going on, we get a glimpse of a group who's about to attack a certain village in the frontier, and also something about luring the beasts into their cage. A great man named Gazif Stronov and his warrior troops came across a plundered village shortly after. He wants the survivors to be sent to the capital called Rontel, but the vice captain wonders about the true intention of the attack. Meanwhile, Mamonga is using the mirror of remote viewing to look around when he sees another village getting ransacked. The ones who are doing so appear to be knights. Now, since Mamonga is an undead, he no longer has the same kind of sympathy for other humans, so initially he sees no point in getting involved. However, Sebes, who was by his side, looks distressed. This reminds him of a fellow guild member named Touch Me, and Mamonga decides to get involved. Whatever, he was going to eventually test his powers anyway. So he teleports there, saves a young girl and a little girl, then summons a Death Knight and tasks him to go take care of the situation. Unexpectedly, Albedo pops up as a knight in shining armor, but her distaste for humans comes through. Anyway, he heals them, and when asked for his name, the man introduces himself as Ainz Ol Gaun, and that's what we'll be calling him from now on. He wears a mask to hide his undead face, and then helps rid the village of the intruders. Posing as a magic caster, he asks the village chief for some information about the new world, and then decides to depart. Though that's when the warrior from before, Gazif, arrive in the village with his troops. Ainz introduces himself as well as the fact that he was the one who protected the village. As you can expect, the warrior sincerely thanks Ainz for his help. But then the entire village gets surrounded by some mysterious figures. We get a little tidbit of a conversation where Negan of the Sunlight Scripture is being tasked with murder of the mightiest warrior in the land, Gazel Stronov. In the present, the entire village is surrounded, and the warrior asks Ainz to help protect the village once again, while he himself will attack the enemies with his troops. Ainz had begun to respect the warrior and take him up on his offer. He also gives him a little souvenir which Gazif doesn't understand, at least not then. However, as the battle rages on, Gazif and his troops are overwhelmed by the enemy. When Gazif encounters the enemy leader and realizes that they'll lose, he warns him, tells him to leave the village alone, because someone even stronger than he himself is currently there. The enemy leader casts it aside as a mere bluff and tells his troops to finish off Gazif for good. But then, just before Gazif lost his life, he and his men are suddenly transported back to the village because of that souvenir, which vanished after doing its job. Gazif instantly realized that it was Ainz who saved them. Ainz and Albedo then go to the battlefield. Within mere moments, Ainz has them all scared out of their living daylights and asks them to surrender. But their leader doesn't listen and decides to summon his strongest angel, the Dominion Authority. Seeing him call that the strongest severely disappointed Ainz. But the leader, once again, thought that it was just a bluff and asked the angel to attack. And unexpectedly, it does barely end up scratching Ainz, which leads to Albedo getting mad with rage. He asks Albedo to calm down and then makes the angel disappear using a black hole. The enemy has no cards left whatsoever and beg for forgiveness, but it was about time they suffer the consequences. All of them get annihilated. Albedo, a woman in love, is beyond thrilled seeing how cool her master is. Following this event, Ainz returns back home. He officially renames himself after the name of their guild, Ainz Ol Gaun, and then asks his subordinates to spread his name across the new world. Though his cute floor guardians kind of misunderstand his words and realize that it's time to take over the entire world. Later, when Albedo was reporting to Ainz, Sheltir comes in and has her usual scuffle with Albedo. She then informs Ainz that she's leaving for a mission and just wanted to pay her regards. Following this, Ainz and the beautiful battle maid Naborel pose as adventurers and enter the capital city of Irantel. He beats up a goon in a bar and accidentally breaks a lady's precious potion, so he compensates by giving her a red one. Then, as the two are alone in the room, Naborel also expressed her distaste for humans. Anyway, they discuss their plan to learn more about the new world as adventurers. He'll be calling himself Mammon, while Naborel will be Nabe. So now they have to get themselves a job as adventurers. While the girl who got the potion takes it to a shop and realizes that it's a ridiculously rare potion that far outclasses all of the others, the owner of the workshop even tells her grandson to go and discover that adventurer. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Mammon and Nabe partner up with an adventurer that calls itself Swords of Darkness. They were going to go with their quest, but then someone asks for Mammon specifically and the goal changes. The goal is now to escort Nefreya Barare to Karne Village, the one Ainz saved back then. The client also happens to be the grandson of that workshop owner, and so their journey to Karne Village begins. Meanwhile, there's a sinister individual named Clementine at the Irantel Cemetery who meets up with someone named Khajiit and they talk about some strange ritual. On their travels, the party is attacked but quickly takes care of everything. It doesn't take long before the Swords of Darkness realize that they're traveling with some extraordinary individuals. Mammon and Nabe's strength was second to none. Nabe's insults can be too much though, but one of them is a masochist and loves getting degraded by a lady as beautiful as her. Eventually they all set up a campfire and share stories. Mammon also talks about his former fellows. There's this sense of nostalgia, but when one of them talks about how he'll meet them again someday, he gets irritated and leaves the campfire. Nabe follows. Of course, the others deduce that his comrades are probably gone. This makes them feel guilty, but when they talk about his strength, all of them can agree that Mammon is an adventurer of the highest tier, on the same level as an adamantine adventurer. While back at Irantel, those two strange individuals from before are preparing undead minions to take over the city, and coincidentally, Clementine is waiting for Nefreya Barare, who is currently with Mammon and the others to return to the capital. As for Mammon and his new group, they finally arrive at Karne Village after one pleasant journey, and the woman who was saved by Ainz back then, Henry Emmett, welcomes them in. There's also the goblin troop that protects the village. They were summoned using the Horn of the Goblin General, which was given to Henry by Ainz. She doesn't know Mammon is Ainz, but talks about Ainz and how he used a red potion to heal her back then. This causes Nefreya to deduce that Mammon is Ainz because it was the same red potion that was brought to their workshop. He talks about it to Mammon, although Mammon tells him not to talk about it with anyone else. It's a secret. Soon enough, they start gathering the herbs which Nefreya wanted for their workshop, while Mammon is on his way to make the rumored Wise King of the Forest his pet. It was easier than it sounded, and Maman was kind of disappointed. Just like that, a monstrous wild hamster is reduced to a humble pet. His name is Hamsuke. Once again, everyone is surprised by what Maman can do. Nefreya wants to join their party, but Maman tells him that there's no need. He'll just keep protecting the Carney village like he has always done though. Following this, there are a few more awkward interactions, but the team finally returns to Irantel. While the Swords of Darkness help with the herbs at the workshop, Maman and Nabe go and register Hamsuke as a member. But then, unfortunately, Clementine appears at Nefreya's residence in order to abduct him. The Swords of Darkness tries to protect Nefreya, but get brutally killed by her. It's a nightmare. While back at the Adventurers Guild, Nefreya's grandmother guides Maman and Nabe back to their house, only for them to see the dead bodies of their former comrades turned into zombies. Unfortunately, there was nothing he could do, and he had to kill them off to put them out of their misery. Though Maman couldn't help but get to the root of this, he asks the grandmother to hire him so that he and Nabe can go retrieve her grandson for her. And of course, she had no reason to decline. So he asks Nabe to discover his location, and the two find out the existence of a humongous undead army by the cemetery. Maman asks the grandmother to warn everybody about it. That undead army is trying to destroy the gates to the capital so that it can wreak havoc inside. It's a dire situation as the soldiers can't do anything. That is, until Maman and Nabe arrive. They take care of the situation and go to encounter the ringleaders. Maman asks Nabe to take care of Khajiit, while he himself goes up against Clementine. Both of them don't even need to fight seriously. Hamsuke is on standby. Khajiit boasts about how he has absolute resistance up to the 6th tier magic, but gets both himself and his dragon summons absolutely destroyed by Nabe when she uses 7th tier magic. Maman, on the other hand, is casually fighting Clementine, which severely agitates her because, it is obvious, he's not taking the fight seriously. So she stabs him in both of his eyes, and that's when Maman reveals his true existence as an undead overlord. He then proceeds to insult the living daylights out of her by making her realize that she was defeated by a magic caster who didn't even use any magic. He crushes her body and brutally murders her, an utterly pathetic death. They rescue Nefreya and destroy the ritual as well. The entire kingdom is saved. When they're both back at the inn, they are promoted, but he's disappointed because they should have at least reached Orcalium rank. But before this conversation could go on, Albedo contacts them and reveals some shocking news. Looks like Shaltir and Bloodfallen have gone rogue. Going back in time, we see Sebes and a beautiful maid named Solution Epsilon, staying at an inn disguised as nobles from the Baharuth Empire. They had a human slave who sold them out to a certain mercenary group. They both then take a carriage ride to rendezvous with Shaltir and her 2 vampire girls. They have a casual conversation about the respective guild members who created them and then Ainz, but a disturbance outside disturbs their ride. It's a group aided by their former human slave. One of them tries to touch Shaltir's chest but gets both his hands and head cut off. This is where Shaltir and Sebes go their separate ways. She goes after the bandits while Sebes and Solution go back to the capital to gather more information. Eventually she reaches a cave where resides a certain interesting man named Brian Unglass. He challenges her to a fight but gets absolutely ridiculed. Furthermore, Shaltir takes her true vampire form and destroys all of them. It's a massacre. Going on that killing spree, she comes across a group of adventurers. One of them is that woman who got that red potion from Momon. This catches Shaltir's interest. She hypnotizes her and asks her about the potion, and after receiving the information, she decides to leave her alive, as it's probably in accordance with her master's wishes. Though what upset Shaltir was how another one of them was stationed nearby, and he might have fled back to the capital. She instantly summons vampire wolves to go after that adventurer, but unexpectedly, they're all killed by the Black Scripture. This in turn leads to Shaltir meeting a new foe. It's a group of adventurers who work in coherence to take over Shaltir's mind. They succeed, but right before she lost her senses, she kills the wielder and her bodyguard. Ainz had returned to Nazarick and he realized that it's not as much a rebellion as it is mind control. But as he was monitoring Shaltir, he receives a report from Nabarol that the Adventurers Guild has summoned him. It's about the Shaltir situation as well. Momon attends the meeting back at Rental. There are 3 other adventurers who have the same rank as Momon, and their goal is to take care of the vampire. Momon comes up with a story and tells them that he's familiar with that vampire and was already trying to hunt it. He further reveals that he has a crystal that allows him to use 7th tier magic, and makes it abundantly clear that he seeks to deal with the matter by himself. Pretty much everyone takes his word for it, except Ijavarj, who wants his group to accompany Momon, and Momon ends up accepting. Though while they're on their way, Ainz gets Igvarj and his team quite conveniently killed by Mare, and that takes care of that. Then comes Shaltir herself. Albedo and Ainz approach her, and Ainz tries to undo the spell using his magic ring, but fails. Though seeing how it had failed, Ainz suddenly transports them all to somewhere safer. This causes Albedo to ask why they fled, but Ainz was rather upset, but instantly calms down because of his undead disposition. He then talks to Albedo about why the magic didn't work. It's because the mind control was caused by a world item. This surprised Ainz as he had no idea there were world items in the new world. So they go back in order to retrieve some world items from their treasury. Another battle maid named Yuri Alpha accompanies them. Pandora's actor, the guardian of the treasury, was kind of difficult to communicate with, but he eventually gets the ring of Ainz's old gown. Albedo's ring is given in return to Yuri. They then enter the mausoleum where there are golden statues after each supreme being. Ainz was the one who created them as a memorial for their comrades. Following this, he also mentions how one day there will be a statue of him there as well. Albedo gets sentimental, as this implied that he'll eventually leave them as well, so she begs him to stay with them forever, but Ainz wasn't making any promises. Though if he ever had to go far away for whatever reason, it'll be her responsibility to lead and protect Nazarick. As for Shaltir, he intends to take her on, all by himself. Albedo pleads that he shouldn't go alone, but seeing the determination and how it's his responsibility to take care of his subordinates, Albedo couldn't stop him. So he arrives at the site together with Aura and Mare, and then asks the two siblings to scout the area and make sure no one else gets involved. Both of them get world items. Meanwhile, the shrewdest man in Nazarick, Demiurge, returns to Nazarick. And then, in the presence of Albedo and Cocytus, he asks them about what's going on. He's already got the gist of it because of Albedo's message. The man criticizes Albedo for letting him go alone and how there's a possibility that he might get eliminated. What if it's a trap? So he decides to go after him, but gets stopped by Cocytus, who is tasked with making sure nobody interferes. Back at the site, Ainz approaches Shaltir, who is simply standing in the middle of nowhere. He uses all sorts of enhancement spells there were, and eventually Shaltir uses her Valkyrie armor. The battle begins, and the two don't really hold back, especially Shaltir, who is basically on steroids. Soon enough, she begins to gain the upper hand, but Ainz easily countered everything, until finally she summons Einherjar, a body double, and that increases the scale of her attack. Ainz defeats the double but gets his mana drained. She prepares herself for a final blow and asks Ainz if he has any last words, but the man simply told her that everything is still going according to his plan. The battle then enters its final phase, and with each exchange, Shaltir loses her cool. Eventually, she pierces him with her world item and begins to drain his HP. But as they both hear a beat from Ainz's watch, he declares that the battle is over. Ainz suddenly activates an insanely high-tier magic spell with Shaltir in the center. She wasn't going to just stand by and watch, so she lands a killing blow on Ainz, but gets distracted midway because of a spell from Aura and ends up bearing the full weight of Ainz's attack. Hence, in turn, she begins to fade out of existence after admitting that she lost. Ainz then returns back to Nazarick and makes preparations for a resurrection ritual, and then as the Floor Guardians remain cautious that she still might be under the mind control, Ainz resurrects her. Fortunately, she doesn't have any memories of what happened in the last 5 days, plus her breast pads are also missing. Of course, everyone else was genuinely irritated by her and her priorities. But Ainz couldn't help but feel nostalgic about the entire thing and reminisce about his time with his fellow guild members. He tells them not to worry about anything, and he bears full responsibility of everything that happened. Be that as it may, the very fact that one of them got mind-controlled is a testament to the existence of a foe that poses a threat to Nazarick. Ainz wasn't quite thrilled about it. He tells everyone that they need to strengthen their forces. Albedo reports that there is a great lake wherein lizard men dwell, so what are they going to do about it? Time passes by, Sebas continues his hunt for information, Nabe accompanies Nefreya and his grandmother to the Carne village, and then later, back at the Adventurers Guild, Momon's team, aka Darkness, has finally been promoted to Adamantine, which is the highest rank there is. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.